Hi everyone, this is Molly Yenholm, your art history instructor, and today we are taking a quick look at the origins of Impressionism. Impressionism is arguably one of the most beloved artistic styles today, but that wasn't always the case. It is easily recognized by the thick application of paint known as impasto and the use of highly saturated colors, often in complementary pairs, and depicting scenes of ordinary, if somewhat idealized, views of modern life, taking us from the streets of Paris to rural country scenes, capturing the fleeting atmospheric effects of light. But just when did this style begin? Who were these Impressionists? The first appearance of Impressionism is often associated with the 1874 exhibition held by a group of some 30 artists who called themselves the Anonymous Society of Painters, Sculptors, Engravers, and etc. Although many of these mostly young artists had previously shown at the prestigious annual Paris Salon, their work was often met with little notice or increasingly rejected during the jurying process itself, meaning they would have to wait yet another year to have even the opportunity to show their work again. These artists collectively decided to take a proactive stance to challenge the autocracy of the Paris Salon and showcase their work to the public as they saw fit. They rented out the former studio of the popular photographer Nadar, and these 30 artists put on a total of 165 artworks on view and for sale. Unfortunately, the show could hardly be considered a success. It cost more to put on than the artist would earn. Why? Well, to the 19th century art patron, these paintings seemed more like sketches for later works, and even worse, they seemed unfinished and untalented. There were even cartoons published in the newspaper mocking their efforts with captions describing revolution in painting and a terrorizing beginning, or warning pregnant women not to enter as it might harm the unborn child, and one even has a man looking for Ernest for the talent on the back side of the canvas because it certainly was not evident on the front. Of all the criticisms received of the show, the most famous remains the critique by Louis Leroy. He described Claude Monet's 1872 painting titled Impression Sunrise as follows. Impression. I am certain of it. I was just telling myself that since I was impressed, there had to be some impression in it. And what freedom! What ease of workmanship! Wow, so we might think that this is actually a rave review, but wait, there's more. He continues, quote, "A preliminary drawing for a wallpaper pattern is more finished than this seascape, period, end quote, and slam." Leroy titled his review of the self-proclaimed independent artists instead as the exhibition of the Impressionists. And by doing so, he also effectively gave the young rabble-rousers their name. 2 years later, they held their second exhibition, still as the Independents. However, by their third exhibition the next year, these artists took on that label themselves. Not all the artists were quite so enthusiastic about this title, perhaps most notably Degas, who would reject this title and probably be quite annoyed or dismayed at his continued association with this term, but that's another topic for another day. All in all, we can say that the Impressionists, including Claude Monet, Camille Pissarro, Auguste Renoir, Alfred Sisley, Bert Morisot, and like it or not, Edgar Degas, first made their mark in 1874 as the Impressionists. As time goes on, they would be joined by the ranks of Paul Cézanne, Mary Cassatt, Marie Brocmond, and even Georges Seurat, who would make his mark in the final exhibition held in 1886. However, nothing comes from nothing, as the famous saying goes. This movement did not emerge from thin air. It was the result of continuous experimentations by these young artists that reached back to the 1850s and 60s. It looked to the precedents of artists ranging from John Constable and William Turner in England to the Barbizon painters, including Jean-François Millet, and the realist Courbet, and of course, Edward Manet. And moving forward, these experiments and exhibitions would lay the groundwork for the revolutions in art that would continue to flourish in the late 19th and early 20th century.